Hey there, it's Carly with the Expat Focus podcast. If you're not tuning into the show on YouTube yet, check us out at Expat Focus and don't forget to subscribe. Before the pandemic hit, American Jake Doherty was running two very successful tour guide services in Bavaria. When COVID-19 completely decimated the travel industry, he had to find another way to put food on the table. In this chat, find out what motivated Jake to become a tour guide and settle in southern Germany, and why he set up his interactive cooking experience platform called Deri Dari. Jake, you've been called an encyclopedia of Bavarian history. Can you tell me how an American living in Bavaria ends up with that reputation?
Well, that's a funny reputation. But to start with, I'm a history nerd. I started studying history when I was in high school. And then when I went to university in Atlanta, Georgia, I double majored in history and philosophy. When I moved over to Europe about 23 years ago, which it doesn't seem that long. But 23 years ago when I moved over, I was very tactile. And so I wanted to go around and just touch everything. I was like, oh, I got to go see that church. What's that? What's that? And so it was just this journey. And what ended up happening is it led me to become a tour guide. I've been a tour guide now for about 15 years. And what ends up happening as you kind of develop your repertoire of tours that you're going to do is you begin to build the story that you're going to tell on these tours. And I use the history that I culminated from university, from college, and from going around Europe and just seeing these things and then continually reading. And then I had the one thing that every tour guide hates. I had a bad review. I had a client come out and she said she didn't believe everything that I told her. And boy, it broke my heart. I was like, oh my God, I got to fix that. I got to fix that.
And were you offering history tours of Bavaria at that time or somewhere else in Europe?
Yeah, I was offering history tours of Bavaria, and she was actually on a brewery tour, which is my specialty. I know everything about beer. So it was kind of one of those shocks to my system. And it was a good one. Every now and then you need to have that wake up call. And what it did is it made me go back and restudy and relearn and continue to read good books about what it is that I'm going to do for what I do for a living instead of watch, Seinfeld on the TV.
But was she right? Were you incorrect? Or was she wrong in her belief that she didn't believe it?
Well, Carly, it was interesting timing because every now and then you get a kick in the butt from the cosmos. And so that review came out. And about 4 weeks later, the high school teacher that gave me my love of history, excuse me, he came to visit Bavaria. And I took him on a couple of tours. And it was so much fun to have him there because he kept correcting me on the things that I was wrong. And then I kept correcting him. And so I was like, no, you got that wrong. Come look at this. And so it was a great joy to have that experience right on the heels of the bad review. And like I said, it was a kick in the butt from the cosmos because you combine the two things. It told me that even if I was telling maybe the historical facts in the right way, maybe I could tell it a different way that would entertain, but keep it more to the truth, And so it was a lot of fun. And so was she correct in her own way, in the way that she saw that I did my job? Yeah, she was correct. Now, historically, what I was talking about, beer and its birth, and of course, the monastic breweries and how they brought beer to what we have today. History has a lot of sides, let's say that. So I think I'm correct.
And, like you said, you quite like beer. Is that what kept bringing you back to Bavaria and ultimately, saw you base yourself in Bavaria? What was it about Bavaria when you first came to Europe that just saw you keep wanting to return?
It's funny, expats, whenever they decide to settle overseas, especially Americans when we come over, there's always that one place that just kind of grabs us, and especially travelers. And if you ask a traveler, what's your favorite place? They're going to know it right off the top of their head. They go, oh, well, that's my favorite. But I also like this, and this, but that's my favorite. For me, it was Bavaria. And because it was like a homecoming, I am from South Louisiana, way down south, just outside of New Iberia, where they make Tabasco, a little town called Cade. My mother was in Lafayette, Louisiana. My father was in Cade. So very small town, South Louisiana, Cajun French community. So those people, they're very family oriented. It's their life. Everything's about family, and it's about who you know. In fact, the running joke where I am from is when I meet somebody, it's like, okay, well, who's your mama? Who's your papa? Because you want to know their bloodline. You want to know who their family is, because family is everything. So when I moved to Bavaria, the Bavarians have that exact same mentality. It is very, very family oriented. And so whenever you go to meet a Bavarian, the first question is, well, what's your family name? You're like, Bada. Oh, which Bada are you? Are you from the Olstadt family, or from the Mittenwald Badas? Are you the Bauer Badas? And so it felt very comfortable. And they have a rich and a strong sense of pride in who they are, and their clothing and their farming lifestyle. And yes, beer. South Louisiana, we love our beer. And of course, the Bavarians, they like to think they created beer. So it's a lot of fun being here and being in that culture.
So, you had this history of, loving and studying history, and then you end up in Bavaria, which is all about the beer and has those family ties that mean a lot to you as well. Was it a bit of a no-brainer for you to get into being a tour guide, or did you look at doing other things before you found your path?
I had traveled Europe by bartending. And when I wasn't bartending, I was working in ski resorts. And when I wasn't doing that, I was working in hotels, anything from housekeeping to bartending to running a restaurant for the American military, for Armed Forces Recreation Centers Europe. So I had kind of bounced around doing whatever gave me a paycheck and kept me traveling and kept me, housed and fed. So tour guiding, though, how did I get into it? I was good at it. It just kind of came natural to me. I started working as a tour guide for a little bit, but for the American military here in Garmisch-Partenkirchen. And then I got a job working in Munich as a tour guide. And then when I was living in Italy for a short period of time, I thought I could be a tour guide here, but there were so many rules for being a tour guide in Italy. And I started some of the process to get my licensing. And I thought, wow, this is a really neat job. I think I could be good at this. And then I abruptly had to leave Italy, and I came back to Germany. When I got back to Germany, this was about 13 years ago, I had already kind of had my foundation, and I thought, well, this is fun. And I'm very narcissistic, and I love having people listen to me. So it's like, oh, yeah,
going to be the center of attention.
Look at me, so it's just awesome, to have that opportunity to teach, but not have to grade papers, to have people be entertained by what I talk about, and to basically take people and show them the stuff that I think is cool, and to watch them think it's cool. It's just there is no better job, to be honest.
It's funny. My first thought of, if you go somewhere and you want to do a tour is, well, isn't the best tour guide a local? And then I thought back to the trips around Europe that I have done. When I was in Paris, it was a Canadian guy showing me around Paris. When I was in Iceland, it was a Swedish woman. When I was in Munich, it was an American guy. And I thought, how many times have I actually done a tour run by someone who is of the same nationality and possibly from the place that I am touring? So what is it about foreigners, do you think, that make good tour guides? And what is it that means you don't need to be from the place you're guiding, to do an award-winning and have a great reputation as a tour guide?
Funny you bring that up. I get pre-COVID, I had a staff of 8 people that ran tours with my businesses. And I let me say this. I just very rarely hired locals. I always hired expats. And the reasons being are this. One, an expat comes into an area, or somebody who's not a local. I don't have to use the word expat, just somebody who's not a local. They'll come into the area and they're going to be fascinated by everything. Whereas somebody like my wife, who was born, raised from this town, has never been to the peak of the tallest mountain in Germany, which is what the photo is behind me. She's never, I bought her first ticket to go up there when we got married. She had never been to Neuschwanstein Castle. She had never gone to see Ludwig II's dream.
Everything on her doorstep. Yeah.
It's right there on your doorstep. And the problem is they look, further down the road. Whereas we come into this situation as a foreigner, into this town, into this area, and it's like, wow, everything's new and exciting for us. And we share that excitement very easily to our customers and to our clients. The second reason that I never hire locals is, as an English speaking tour guide service in Bavaria, we cater a lot to Americans and to people from United Kingdom, Singapore, and other countries. And inevitably, there's always going to be questions, especially here, about the Nazis. What do they think about that time period between 33 and 45 when Adolf Hitler was in power? And if you have a local and you're the client, sometimes you don't want to ask those questions. You're afraid you might offend them. You might bruise their, you don't know how to approach that subject matter. Whereas an American who's talking to an American who's lived in that country for 22 years, that they know that American is going to be like, yeah, I'll tell you anything you want to know. So,
and they can tell you what they've experienced of the locals' attitudes and thoughts on that as well, correct, without having that confronting situation of asking and possibly offending a local person, I suppose.
Exactly. And I've been blessed in the sense that I have just a great pool of amazingly intelligent people who live and work in Garmisch-Partenkirchen for the American military that have either retired or are looking for extra work that I can basically draw from to hire as tour guides. And so that is very handy for me. So it makes for a lot of really fun tours.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, you said you have or had a staff of about 8 people, but then COVID happened. And we know that the accommodation, the tourism sector was just completely annihilated. What happened to your business over that time? Your businesses, because you run 2 different tour companies, don't you?
I do. We have All Things Garmisch, which is where we do day tours, team building, and outdoor recreation. And then we have Bavarian Beer Vacations, where we do most of our vacations like and trips too. It's a lot of fun. I mean, it's self-explanatory.
Yeah.
So mainly we go to the Oktoberfest. But what ended up happening was my wife and I, we were in South Africa on vacation. We came back. It was February. And by the beginning, I think it was beginning of March, end of February, beginning of March, there was about a 2-week period there where I lost over $270,000 in confirmed bookings. Gone. It took about 2 weeks for everybody to cancel them. Just everything went bing. And we were fully booked because we had the Passion Play coming in. We had the Oktoberfest trips. They were all completely fully booked. And just all of our day tours for the summer, gone. Everything was fully booked. Everything was canceled. And, you take a lot of deposits using these booking agencies like Fair Harbor. So we had to pay all that back. I just bought 2 new vehicles, had to sell those back as quickly as possible. And then I pulled in my staff, and there was a lot of tears, and we drank a lot of beers, a lot of tears, a lot of beers. And we all realized that it was over. So my wife and I run this business together. So we went to the Arbeitsamt and the Finanzamt and all the different German government agencies, and we basically mothballed it. We kept it alive, but breathing on a ventilator, so to speak.
Yeah, life support.
Yeah, exactly. And then I sat on the couch in my underwear, grew up my beard, drank a lot of beer.
Lockdown number 1. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Ate a lot of mint jelly. More mint jelly. And then eventually my wife, she threw me outside the door. She's like, get out of my house. And I went outside, and I think she hosed me down. And then I found some clean clothes, and it was lockdown. We weren't supposed to associate with anyone. We weren't supposed to be anywhere. Can't go anywhere. But my neighbor, who is a good friend of mine, we basically from across the fence started drinking beer together and talking. And he's a chef, and he started talking about how he was losing all of his chefs. And that just gave me this idea about creating my new business, which is called Deri Dari, which we now run in the United States, where we create live interactive cooking courses for people. So it's a lot of fun. And that is really what kind of kept me afloat and kept me going. I was able to focus my energies there, get it moving, get it up and running. And now, thank God, I've got some great business partners who kind of run that so that I can focus more back on tours and tourism. So
it's such a good idea. I think I did 2 cooking courses during the first wave of the pandemic. I signed up for Japanese cooking classes. So we had a live class a week for like 4 weeks. And so it was like a little activity my boyfriend and I did together at home. And I did one on French pastry too, and learned how to make a tarte citron. I was so proud of myself.
That's awesome.
Did you find like you had a lot of uptake in the States? Lots of people were, wanting to move on from baking banana bread and try something more adventurous?
Yeah, we did. We had a lot of fun. We set it all up. We started off about 42 chefs. We were doing live
Wow.
interactive cooking courses. We were coupled with ingredient delivery, and it went really, really well. But then once the lockdown started lifting, the business started kind of dropping. We knew it was going to happen. And so we always kind of were focused on our next project, which is what we're doing as we speak, where we put basically on CSA boxes and meal kit delivery services, we put a flyer inside those. And that flyer says, would you like a live chef? And it's got a QR code on it. And what we've done is we've built this business up enough to where now you can scan that QR code using your phone and right then and there choose a chef who is live, and then have that chef unbox the CSA box with you, talk about the ingredients inside and what you can cook. Or if you got a
Ah.
meal kit delivery service and you're in the middle of cooking this meal and, oh my gosh, I just accidentally put, the butter in boiling water. What do I do? Then you can instantaneously, I'm near to instant. It takes about 5 minutes with, getting the paperwork done, so to speak. You can have a live chef in your kitchen. So that's my biggest goal, is to have it to where you can just, once you have your membership, it's just you click a button, there's a live chef. And so it helps with a lot of the meal kit delivery services are really interested in it. And we're working right now with 2 different ones. And then CSA box companies, it's a lot of fun because you get these weird vegetables sometimes. You're like, what do I
What
do
do I
with
do?
that?
It's so funny you mentioned that, because I feel like my boyfriend and I did the natural progression from, doing a few cooking classes during lockdown, and we've just signed up to meal kit delivery.
There you go. The natural procession. Exactly. The progression.
So
Yeah,
now
it's a lot of
next
fun.
next we'll be looking for a chef to give us advice. That's exactly what's going to happen.
Well, hey, we're there for you. Just go to deridari.com and you can find us.
And I suppose the chefs you worked with initially would have been so grateful for the opportunity during COVID, when their restaurants weren't open and maybe they weren't, dealing with takeaways, to have something to do. I know the Japanese cooking course that we did was a woman who would normally do workshops in person, and just, her business died overnight. So she's like, okay, I'll take it online and see who out there wants to do it.
Yeah, there were so many people that were hungry that needed a paycheck and were lost. And so that we had a lot of chefs gravitate towards Deri Dari immediately once we put it out there that we were doing this. And for us as a business, it was great because we got to weed through the ones that we knew were going to be really good chefs that had that ability to use this platform to teach. And then the ones that went back to work when, the restrictions lifted, we had plenty, so that we could basically say, okay, you going back to work, let us know when you have free time if you want to continue working with us. And then there were those that decided maybe this is where we want to stay. So the moms who wanted to spend Christmas with their kids instead of in a kitchen.
Yeah.
So,
It's opened
or
up
that,
so many new work
mhm,
opportunities for people. I'm
yeah.
curious to know if you took any of your tours online at that time, because I know, weren't museums doing like virtual tours and stuff during the first lockdowns? Did you ever think about you doing your Bavaria tours as an online concept?
Well, Carly, it's interesting you bring that up. That's how I got the idea for Deri Dari, is all the OTAs I was working with now, online travel agencies such as Tours by Locals, Viator, Expedia, Airbnb. A lot of them gravitated towards virtual tourism whenever the lockdown began. And so I kept getting these emails and even phone calls saying, will you do this as a virtual tour?
Yeah.
The problem I had here is most of my tours were outdoors, bad Wi-Fi. So I did a couple just to kind of test the waters to see how it would go. And I just didn't find it to be a seller, so to speak. I mean, if you want to learn about Neuschwanstein, that's a YouTube video. So why pay for it?
Yeah.
So it was just kind of hard for me to, in my mind, justify creating a tour and then selling it whenever I could just do a YouTube video and show it to you, and then you can just go and click on it. Whereas that's why I kept kind of playing with the idea in my head. And when my friend, who is the chef, said, he was losing all of his cooks and he didn't know if he was going to get them back. And I thought, well, wait a minute, what about like a cooking show? Because then, especially if I can couple it with some form of ingredient delivery, it's tactile. Remember, I'm very tactile. So it was like, we can give you the stuff you need and a live chef. So you cross the barrier, that video chat barrier. So it's
Definitely.
funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny because there was a big company who shall remain nameless who had approached me about doing virtual tours even before COVID. And that's what I kept telling them. I was like, you have to have something tactile. You can't just put it on a screen. You need to have something in their hand.
Give them
So,
like a box of scents to go with the tour, or
yeah,
beers.
something. Yeah, exactly. Lots of Bavarian beer. That would be perfect.
Yeah. I think a few of my friends did gin and wine tastings over Zoom with some guides. That looked like fun too. And so, Jake, now that international travel is like tentatively back on the table and people are venturing overseas again, what do your two tour businesses look like now?
I was in the United States for about a 6-month period, building up Deri Dari until I think it was end of July. End of July this year, last 2021, end of July, I got a phone call from a travel company that I work with that is in Illinois. And he's like, I've got bookings. Are you going to be available? And I said, I don't
Bookings?
know.
What
Let
are
me think.
those?
Yeah, exactly. I was like, I don't know. Let me get back to you on that. So I talked to my wife about it, and we were kind of on the fence as to whether or not we were going to move the kids to the States and put them in school there, or keep them in school here in Germany, because I have 2 daughters. So we sat down, and my wife and I had a heart to heart about it, and we decided, yeah, let's go back to Germany. So we packed everything up, went back, unmothballed the businesses, all things commercial Bavarian Beer Vacations, got the insurances back up, got the vehicles ready to go and inspected, that kind of stuff. And I called up that guy in Illinois, and I was like, yeah, I'm ready. And so we had August, September, October, pretty good bookings. We weren't, anything pre-COVID, but we were at least getting 2 to 3 bookings a week. And then November is traditionally a quiet month for us. And then December is chaos, because we have the Christmas markets, and we have Krampus,
Right.
the evil demons that come out and beat you.
Yes,
It's so much fun.
Creepy dude. Yeah.
Love it. I love it. I love it. It's my favorite event of the year. I take people every year, and it is my all-time favorite thing. I call it vacationing with fear. You gotta come, Carly.
It
Seriously.
is scary. Oh my God.
Oh, it's awesome. So we were all geared up. December, I had already started bringing back a couple of my old guides, because we were double and triple booked, and I was excited. And December was going to be good. And then Delta variant, Omicron variant. Yeah. And so within days, there goes December. Everything got canceled. It took like 3 days. Everything got canceled. And what you're finding, and I was talking to a friend of mine, she owns a restaurant, and I was talking to another guide who runs a tour service here in Bavaria, and we were all 3 just lamenting about how there's just no reliability in our business anymore. People book, they cancel, book, they cancel, book, they cancel. And the OTAs that we work with offer free cancellation up to certain dates, which is great for the consumer,
but not for the business.
And then if you book direct with us, which was always an advantage, but now we're using basically booking agencies such as Fair Harbor and others. Well, they want their cut too. So people book and then they cancel. We still got to pay that little percentage of basically for the transaction fees.
And you're getting nothing out of it.
We're losing money. We're losing money. So it's not there yet, especially here. And I'll tell you what every one of my clients say is they're afraid to come over here, have a great vacation, get COVID, not that they're going to get sick, but get COVID and then be stuck here for another 2 weeks because they have to quarantine, or for another week if they have to quarantine, depending on what rules they are.
I was speaking to another American, Chrissy Whalen, who's traveling the world with her son, Zephyr. She runs the Instagram account Single Mom Budget Travel. And she was saying it's a selfish act to travel right now, but if you go ahead and do it, you need to plan to possibly need to extend your trip for an extra 2 weeks because of COVID. And if you can't afford an extra 2 weeks because you have to stay in a hotel in lockdown in Germany, for example, then don't go abroad.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's what we're finding is people are very cautiously and tentatively booking. And then they hear something on the news on CNN about how this new variant's coming, and then they cancel. So it's not there yet. So what I have kind of started to do is there's a lot of American military that live and work in this area. So once again, started working with them tentatively, and a lot of retarees. So as your friend was saying, who runs that Instagram account, that if you can take that, if you can put in your mindset that you might be extending your travel for 2 weeks, you're going to travel. Retirees, they have no set schedule. So we're seeing a lot of people over 60 that are just like, screw it, I've got 3 different shots in my arm, I'm coming to Europe. And
Right.
so we're getting some retirees with the mindset that if they do get stuck here for an extra 2 weeks, it's not the end of the world.
It's cool. They don't have a job to go back to.
Exactly.
No big commitments. Yeah, that's a good point.
But it's
And
a
so,
challenge.
well, that's what I was wondering, Jake. So in hindsight, then, with so much uncertainty in tour guiding, was it the right decision, do you think, for yourself and your family to move back from the States and try to resuscitate your businesses at this time?
I think it was Jack Nicholson in an interview in the 1970s said that regret is a useless emotion. Um, I I look at those decisions as something that's going to lead me to something else. Do I look back at the finances of it and think it would have been better to stay in the States? Yes. Financially, if I would have stayed in the United States and continued to build up Deri Dari, just left the other businesses mothballed, I think my family would be in a much better financial place. Emotionally, mentally, my kids would have missed their friends here in Germany. What we have here is unbelievable. Like I mentioned earlier, Carly, we have a ski run in our backyard. We have zero crime. I haven't locked the door to my house, the back door to my house, since I moved in. It's the kids walk back and forth to school every day. In fact, they're going to be home in about 2 hours. So it's just, this is a better, in my mindset, community for my family. But in hindsight, if I would have known what I know now, would I have stayed in the States? I might have stayed in the States. It would have been a harder decision to make. My wife and I, we lamented over it over a glass of wine. And I think it took us about an hour to finally just say, well, let's go back to Germany. We really like it there. It's really nice in Bavaria. We can do this from both sides of the pond. But yeah, it's just, it is what it is.
It's
The
such an
kids are happy.
uncertain time. Like, it's really hard to know how things are going to look in 3 or 6 months. Will you be back up and running with your tours full time, or will you be moving on with your cooking and chef business and taking that to new heights? It's like the great
Challenge.
unknown right now, which is so hard for businesses. And I'm curious if, we've heard broadly in the global news about the United States, for example, was giving support for people furloughed. Have you been getting support from Germany for your businesses?
When COVID first, happened, yes, we were able to apply for some financial aid from the German government, which happened for about a 6-month period. So it was nothing in comparison to what we had been living on prior. But it was something, it was something to kind of keep us afloat. So we were very thankful for that. But then it dried up, and it's completely dried now. And every time Bavaria, says they've got some new restriction and everything gets canceled, it's just coming out of our own pocket. Now, the good thing is Deri Dari is doing well in the United States. And my wife, she is employed here. She's got her own business here too. And it's actually doing quite well. So that helps a lot. It really does. Because without those two financial supports, we would be I would be working for Amazon like everybody else around here.
And what business lessons do you think COVID has taught you?
Wow, business lessons.
Or continues to teach you?
Yeah, diversity. Keep yourself diverse and ready to pivot. Pivoting is key in any business. If something's not working, you got to be able to just mothball it, move on to the next thing that's going to work. Find something that is going to be successful and be willing to make change. A lot of businesses, that's what happens to them is they are unwilling to change. They have created a business model which they think works, but over time it's going to disintegrate. It's going to die. It's every business that's going to happen. It's inevitable. So you have to be willing to change with the times and with whatever occurs. And right now, travel is just simply dead. And I don't know how to pivot that into something that's going to change. So that's why I created Deri Dari. But yeah,
And it sounds
I'm
like
hoping.
even in the short time that you've had Deri Dari up and running, you've already evolved that a couple of times, which is so impressive. You've really responded to the phases of this pandemic.
You kind of have to. Change is key, being able to create change and have a team around you that sees the same problems in the same way that you do. Steve Jobs said it best: if you can get everybody in one boat rowing in the same direction, you will go wherever it is you wish to go. So it's just having a good team and everybody working in the same mindset and trying to achieve the same goal. So yeah, being able to pivot, having a good team, those are two key things in any business to succeed. With what I did before with travel and tourism, I don't know how to pivot right now. It's ironic that we're doing this interview today, because just about an hour ago, I was on a call with two other travel companies and their owners, and we were discussing what is going to be the future, what is going to work, and how are we as travel businesses. One was in Munich, one was in Fusen, and I'm in Garmisch-Partenkirchen. And these are two very successful businesses and very successful people, but they're in the same boat I am. They're looking for jobs at Amazon because they can't make enough money to feed their kids. So I don't know what the future is going to bring. We'll see.
I'm really curious about, the future of tours and how people will take them, in 3, 6 months and 2 years. Will we be back to pre-pandemic times, or will we be using virtual headsets to experience Bavaria? Maybe you need to get into VR. Maybe that's the way.
Yeah, I was in a lot of startup conventions and stuff like that over the past year, and VR is huge. That's the big market that everybody's trying to move into. So it's coming fast. Well, they can just figure out that queasiness.
To end on a positive then, whether it's through a virtual reality headset or travels back on and people are with you in person, why should they experience Bavaria, and particularly your tours?
Oh, goodness. Well, here is let me start with here. This is just an amazing place to be. The history is just fascinating. You've got, of course, the history of the Wittelsbach family. Bavaria itself is its own country. You have the time when Napoleon was here, that French connection. So you have that French food as well, mixed with the very heavy German food. You've got the great things to see. We have Neuschwanstein Castle, the Alps. We have beautiful alpine lakes. We have Harry Chiemsee Palace, and Munich. Munich itself is just an epicenter of cool stuff, just to go wander and check out. And then if you want to do a tour, if you're going to do a tour in this area, I suggest doing it with either me or with a private tour guide such as myself, and I can recommend some great ones, because having that person who can show you the things that you normally wouldn't see, that's what really makes it exciting. Those are the memories that you'll never forget. So be able to go to Neuschwanstein Castle and not have to stand in a long line or ride in this huge bus with a bunch of stinky people, and be able to get around everybody, but still have like the secret gems that nobody else knows about, like the view of the castle from the back, way behind Marienbrücke, where nobody knows to go. Stuff like that, or to see the dragon of Hohenschwangau. Those are things that you'll never forget, and they'll ring true for the rest of your life. And that financial bump that you're going to have to, pay for having a private tour, you're going to thank yourself later in life. So yeah, that's why I would jump on a tour with me. That's why I would see Bavaria. And Carly, if you love beer, it's here. It's here. There's nothing better than the beer in Bavaria, baby.
Jake, it's been lovely to chat on the Expat Focus podcast today. Thank you so much.
Carly, thank you for having me on the Expat Focus today. It's been a pleasure.
That's it for this episode. You can check out Jake's businesses by searching for All Things Garmisch, Bavarian Beer Vacations, and DeriDari.com. And expatfocus.com is where to go for free moving guides, expat experiences, and other resources to help you move abroad easily.